Only 5% of women can do these 5 things after 40. Hello everyone. Today, I want to talk about something truly powerful, not statistics, not studies, but human potential, because sometimes the numbers don't just inform us, they challenge us. They say only 5% of women over the age of 40 do these 5 things. But here's the real question. Why? Why only 5%? The answer isn't ability. It's not biology. It's not opportunity. It's belief. It's mindset. It's the why behind what we do. They say reinvention is for the young, that by the time you hit 40, the big decisions have already been made. Your career is set, your identity is established, and your story is already halfway told. But that belief, though widespread, is a myth, one of the most damaging ones we hold, because in reality, reinvention isn't about age, it's about awakening. The women who make up the top 5%, those rare individuals who defy the norms and live fully after 40, understand something the rest don't. They know that identity isn't fixed, it's fluid. It grows with you, it evolves as you do, and it changes when you decide to change it. These women don't see life as a straight line. They see it as a series of chapters. And just because one chapter closes doesn't mean the book is over. Reinvention doesn't always mean burning everything down and starting from scratch. Sometimes it's subtle, quiet. It might be taking a different route to work. Not the literal kind, but the mental one. Choosing new perspectives, learning new skills, asking different questions. Sometimes it means leaving a job you've mastered, not because you can't do it anymore, but because it no longer challenges your spirit. And other times it means starting something entirely new. A business, a degree, a project. Something that speaks to who you've become, not who you used to be. The difference is in mindset. While most people over 40 start thinking in terms of limitations, the 5% start thinking in terms of liberation. They stop asking, what can I still do? And start asking, what do I still want to do? They're not interested in repeating the past or proving anything to anyone. They're interested in doing something that feels meaningful now. And let's be clear, invention isn't easy. It comes with discomfort. It brings uncertainty. It often invites criticism from those who are too afraid to try. But what separates these women from the rest is that they've made peace with discomfort. They've accepted that fear is part of the process, not a reason to quit. They understand that anything worth doing is going to stretch you, and that stretch is where the magic lies. At 40, you've lived long enough to know what doesn't work for you. You've collected experiences, mistakes, and lessons that younger people are still trying to understand. The top 5% use this to their advantage. They don't see their past as baggage. They see it as a foundation. Every job, every heartbreak, every late-night decision, it all becomes raw material. Material they use to build what's next. What's most remarkable is that these women don't wait for the perfect time. They don't wait for their kids to be grown, or for the perfect financial situation, or for the approval of others. They start where they are, with what they have, because they know the secret. The perfect time is a myth. And momentum doesn't come from waiting, it comes from acting. You'll often find that these women don't reinvent themselves out of necessity. They reinvent themselves out of desire, a desire to feel more alive, more fulfilled, more aligned with the version of themselves they see in their mind but haven't fully expressed yet. It's not that they're dissatisfied with everything. It's that they refuse to settle for less than what they now know they're capable of. Sometimes reinvention is external, a new look, a new job title, a new city, but more often it's internal, a new standard for how they treat themselves, a new level of self-respect, a new refusal to accept roles that no longer fit. These changes might not always be visible to the outside world, but they're deeply felt, and they ripple out. They impact how these women show up at home, at work, and in every room they enter. And here's the truth no one tells you. When you reinvent yourself after 40, you don't start from zero. You start from experience, from depth, from knowing who you are and being brave enough to become who you still want to be. Reinvention after 40 isn't about changing who you are. It's about becoming more of who you really are. The women who choose to do this don't do it because it's easy. They do it because something inside them refuses to go silent. A whisper that says, "You're not done yet." And that whisper, it's not just a feeling. It's a calling, and when you answer it, you join the 5%. Most women spend a significant part of their lives taking care of everyone else: kids, partners, aging parents, coworkers, friends. From a young age, society teaches women that their value is rooted in how much they give, how much they sacrifice, how much they're willing to put themselves second for the benefit of others. This belief becomes so ingrained that by the time a woman reaches 40, putting herself first doesn't just feel unfamiliar, it feels wrong. It feels selfish. It feels like something to feel guilty about. But the truth, the liberating, powerful truth, is that prioritizing yourself is not selfish. It's essential. And the rare 5% of women who come to understand this truth after 40 live radically different lives from the other 95%. Not because their circumstances are easier, not because they have more time, money, or support, but because they've learned to rewrite the script. They've learned to say, "I matter too." It starts small. Maybe it's taking time each morning to drink coffee in silence before the demands of the day kick in. Maybe it's blocking out 1 hour a week to go to a yoga class, read a book, or take a walk alone, guilt-free. Maybe it's saying no to yet another volunteer commitment, or declining a family gathering that feels more draining than nourishing. These acts seem minor from the outside, but they represent something monumental: a shift in mindset, a declaration that your needs, your peace, and your joy are not optional. Women in this 5% club understand something most don't. Taking care of yourself isn't what happens after you take care of everyone else. It's what allows you to take care of everyone else. You cannot give from an empty cup. You cannot lead, nurture, support, or serve when you are depleted, burned out, or disconnected from yourself. Prioritizing yourself isn't taking something away from others. It's ensuring you have something to give in the first place. But even when the logic is clear, the guilt is real. Decades of conditioning don't disappear overnight. The moment a woman over 40 decides to invest in herself, whether it's hiring a coach, going back to school, joining a wellness program, or simply taking a break, she'll hear a voice in her head. That voice says, "You should be doing something more productive. You should be helping someone else. You should be grateful with what you have." The women who rise into that 5%, they hear that voice too, but they don't let it win. They acknowledge it, challenge it, and move forward anyway, because they've learned that guilt is often a sign that you're breaking free from an old belief system. And growth almost always feels uncomfortable before it feels empowering. This shift from guilt to grace changes everything. Suddenly, you're not waiting for permission to rest. You're not asking for validation to dream. You're not apologizing for taking up space, asking for help, or saying no. You begin to trust your own voice. You begin to feel a deep sense of worth that doesn't depend on how much you've done for others today. And here's what's beautiful. When you model that kind of self-respect, you don't just change your own life. You give others permission to do the same. Your kids see it, your friends see it. The people around you begin to recognize that boundaries, joy, and self-investment aren't selfish acts. They're signs of self-leadership. Women in the 5% aren't superhuman. They're not fearless. They're simply women who have had enough of living on autopilot. They've reached a point where the pain of self-neglect outweighs the discomfort of change, and so they decide. They choose to show up for themselves with the same intensity they've shown up for others. They choose rest over burnout, alignment over approval, authenticity over obligation. It doesn't mean they never help others, quite the opposite. They still love fiercely and give generously, but now they give from overflow, not depletion. They've learned that saying yes to themselves creates a ripple effect of healthier relationships, deeper happiness, and more meaningful impact. And perhaps most importantly, they stop waiting. They stop waiting for the right time, for the kids to grow up, for everything to be perfect. They recognize that they are worth the time, the care, the attention. Right now, not later, not someday, now. Because when a woman decides she matters, everything around her begins to change, her energy shifts. Her standards rise, her boundaries strengthen, and her life expands in ways that no one else can fully understand. Because it's no longer about pleasing the world, it's about honoring herself. That's what only 5% of women discover after 40. But the truth is, it's available to every woman. All it takes is a decision. For most people, turning 40 is a signal to slow down. It's when society starts whispering things like "act your age" or "you've missed your chance." People are expected to settle into a routine, shrink their dreams, and coast quietly toward retirement. But the 5% of women who truly thrive after 40, they don't shrink their goals, they expand them. They don't see 40 as the beginning of the end. They see it as the beginning of something far more powerful: self-actualization. These women have lived long enough to stop performing for the world. They're done chasing approval or trying to fit into boxes that were never designed with their dreams in mind. They've earned the right to be bold, not by anyone else's permission, but through their own lived experience. They know who they are, and more importantly, they know who they aren't. That clarity gives them the courage to dream bigger, not smaller. It's easy to underestimate the power of experience. The world often praises youth, energy, and fresh ideas. But the 5% understand that wisdom, resilience, and life lessons are just as valuable, if not more. When they set new goals, they do so with the knowledge that they've already overcome things that would have broken them years ago. They're not guessing anymore, they're not pretending. They're building on a foundation of real life strength. After 40, many women feel a pull, a quiet, insistent tug towards something more meaningful. Maybe they've raised a family, built a career, or supported a partner's dreams, and then one day they hear a whisper, "What about you?" The 5% don't ignore that voice, they lean into it. They realize it's not too late to start a new business, run a marathon, write a book, move to a different country, or pursue a lifelong passion. If anything, it's the perfect time, because now they're pursuing it not to impress anyone else, but to fulfill something within themselves. Setting bigger goals at 40 and beyond isn't reckless, it's revolutionary. It's a way of reclaiming the narrative that says ambition has an expiration date. It's a direct challenge to the idea that women are meant to dream big when they're 20, hustle hard in their 30s, and play small from their 40s onward. The 5% don't accept that narrative. They write a new one. What's fascinating is that these women often become more ambitious as they age, not less, but their ambition looks different. It's not driven by insecurity or comparison. It's fueled by purpose. They're not trying to prove themselves anymore. They're trying to express themselves. They want to build things that matter, contribute in ways that feel aligned, and show the next generation that age is not a limitation. It's a superpower. That's not to say it's easy. Setting big goals after 40 can be terrifying. Doubts creep in. Society doesn't always applaud the woman who dares to dream big past a certain age. There's pressure to stay safe, stay silent, stay small, but the 5% push through that fear. They understand that the discomfort of growth is far less painful than the regret of never trying. They choose courage over comfort, and it's not just about the end result. It's about who they become in the process. The woman who trains for a marathon at 45 isn't just building stamina. She's building discipline, confidence, and pride. The woman who launches a business at 50 isn't just creating income, she's proving to herself that her ideas still matter. The woman who writes her first book at 60 isn't just telling a story, she's reclaiming her voice. These goals aren't about ego, they're about freedom, the freedom to expand instead of contract, the freedom to pursue what lights you up, regardless of your age, your past, or what anyone else thinks. And when a woman allows herself to do that, to truly go after something bold, she becomes unstoppable. What's powerful is that these women often inspire others without even trying. Their actions speak louder than any motivational quote or speech. They lead by example. They show their daughters, their friends, their communities what it looks like to bet on yourself, to rise when the world expects you to fade, and to start climbing when others are settling down. So if you're a woman over 40 and you have a dream that won't leave you alone, this is your sign. It's not too late, you're not too old, and you don't have to downsize your dreams to fit into someone else's expectations. You get to choose how big your life becomes. The 5% don't have more time. They just make different decisions with the time they have. They go bigger, they go bolder, and in doing so, they show the rest of us what's possible when you stop living by age and start living by intention. There comes a time in life, often around 40, when something shifts. It's subtle at first, like a low hum in the background of your thoughts, but eventually it becomes undeniable. You start to feel the weight of energy that no longer serves you. Conversations that drain you, people who take more than they give, relationships that once felt necessary now feel heavy, complicated, even toxic. And while many people choose to tolerate it, make excuses for it, or bury it under obligations, the women in the top 5% do something different. They let it go. They remove toxic people, ruthlessly, unapologetically, and without looking back. It's not an act of cruelty, it's an act of clarity, because after 40, your time starts to feel more sacred. You become more aware that life isn't endless, that your emotional energy is finite, and that every person you allow into your space is either nourishing your growth or stalling it. The 5% understand this on a deep level. They realize that peace is not a luxury, it's a necessity. This doesn't mean they go around cutting people off at the first sign of conflict. No, they've learned to tell the difference between healthy challenge and chronic chaos. They're not afraid of honesty, accountability, or tough love, but they refuse to entertain manipulation, disrespect, or relationships rooted in guilt, obligation, or fear. Removing toxic people isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, it's a slow distancing, a shift in how available they are, a decision not to engage in the same patterns anymore. They don't need to make a big scene because the decision is made within. A decision to protect their energy like it's gold, because it is. By the time a woman reaches 40, she has likely spent years being the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who keeps things together. But the 5% recognize when that role becomes a burden. They stop being the emotional dumping ground for others. They stop over-explaining, over-giving, and overcompensating. They realize that anyone who truly respects them won't require them to shrink, walk on eggshells, or compromise their sanity just to keep the peace. Sometimes the people they let go of are lifelong friends. Sometimes it's family. Sometimes it's a romantic partner, a boss, or even a social group. And yes, it hurts. It's never easy to walk away from people who were once close. But the 5% understand that emotional safety is not negotiable. They choose alignment over attachment. This choice often leads to a new kind of loneliness, not from being alone, but from being between versions of themselves. Between the person they were and the woman they're becoming, but they sit with it. They let that space be quiet, and in that space they find clarity, healing, strength, and then something beautiful happens. That space they created by letting go of toxic energy, it begins to attract something new. Healthier friendships, deeper love, supportive connections, people who see them for who they are, not who they were expected to be. People who respect their boundaries, value their time, and bring peace instead of drama. The 5% know that protecting your energy isn't just about saying no to others. It's about saying yes to yourself. It's about creating a life where you can breathe fully, speak freely, and show up authentically. And that can't happen when you're constantly managing the emotions of people who don't want to grow, who don't want to see you rise, or who only love the version of you that stays small. This doesn't make them heartless, it makes them honest, and that honesty sets them free. As women, we're often taught to put relationships above everything else, to forgive endlessly, to give people the benefit of the doubt even when it costs us our peace. But the women who thrive after 40 understand this simple truth. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone gets to walk with you into the next chapter. So they draw the line, not out of hate, but out of self-respect. And once they do, everything begins to shift. Their confidence grows, their energy returns, their minds become clearer, their hearts feel lighter, because they're no longer carrying the emotional baggage of relationships that were never meant to last forever. If you're standing at that crossroads, unsure of whether to keep tolerating what drains you or to choose yourself, let this be your permission. The women who choose peace, boundaries, and emotional freedom don't end up lonely. They end up surrounded by people who match their growth. Because when you remove what's toxic, you make room for what's true. Somewhere along the way, women are taught that starting over is something to be ashamed of. That reinvention means failure. That if you didn't get it right the first time, whether in career, relationships, lifestyle, or identity, you must have taken a wrong turn. So many people cling tightly to what's familiar, even when it no longer fits. They stay in jobs that no longer excite them, in roles that no longer define them, in stories that no longer reflect who they are. But the women who belong to that rare 5%, they do something extraordinary. They give themselves permission to begin again. They understand that starting over is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of power. It takes courage to say, this isn't working anymore. It takes strength to admit, I want something different now. It takes radical self-awareness to recognize when it's time to close one chapter and turn the page, especially when the world expects you to just keep going as you are. What sets these women apart is that they don't allow the fear of judgment to hold them back. They know that people will talk, that friends and family might question their decisions, that society might raise its eyebrows when a woman over 40 decides to start a business, go back to school, leave a marriage, or move across the world. But they do it anyway, because they've learned that the discomfort of staying stuck is far greater than the fear of starting fresh. Beginning again doesn't always mean a dramatic, sweeping change. Sometimes it's internal. A shift in values, a new standard, a deeper understanding of who they are and what they want. Sometimes it's waking up one day and realizing they're no longer willing to compromise their peace for the sake of being polite. Sometimes it's small, quiet, and deeply personal, but it's always powerful. The women who choose to begin again after 40 have usually already experienced life in full color. They've faced heartbreak, disappointment, success, and setbacks. They've poured into others, played countless roles, and carried more than most will ever know. But instead of letting those experiences harden them, they allow them to become fuel, evidence that they can survive change, and even more than that, thrive in it. When they choose to start over, they do so with intention. They aren't chasing trends or running from pain. They are stepping into alignment, into authenticity, into something that reflects their truest self, even if that version is still being shaped. And because they've lived enough life to know what they don't want, their new beginning is often more honest, more meaningful, and more grounded. But here's what most people miss. Beginning again is not a return to square one. It's a reset, but with wisdom. It's starting over with experience, with context, with emotional maturity. It's being able to say, I've tried the old way, now I'm doing it my way. Yes, there are fears. There's uncertainty. There's the feeling of being a beginner again, which can be humbling, sometimes even humiliating, but the 5% lean into it. They know that being new at something doesn't make them inadequate, it makes them brave. It makes them alive. Because there's nothing more energizing than the moment you realize you're no longer trapped. You have a choice. And what's most inspiring is that these women don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't wait until the kids are grown, the bank account is full, or all the doubts are gone. They start right in the middle of the mess, in the middle of fear, in the middle of uncertainty, because they know that clarity comes from action, not before it. These women stop defining themselves by their past and start defining themselves by their potential. They no longer ask, what will people think if I change everything? They ask, what will it cost me if I don't? They know that regret weighs more than risk. That time is not something to be managed, it's something to be honored. And so, they honor it, by beginning again, by giving themselves the grace to rewrite their story, by refusing to believe that their best days are behind them. If you've ever thought it's too late to change direction, to try again, to chase the thing you can't stop thinking about, look to these women. They are the proof. Starting over after 40 isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of everything that finally feels like you. After 40, something incredible begins to happen. If you let it, the noise starts to quiet down. The expectations that once weighed heavily begin to lose their grip. The desire to impress, to seek approval, to fit into someone else's definition of success starts to fade. And in that silence, a new voice begins to emerge. A voice that's always been there, buried beneath layers of roles and responsibilities. It's your voice, and the 5% of women who truly thrive after 40, they learn how to listen to it. They stop seeking validation from the outside world and start trusting their own inner compass. It's not an instant switch. It's a slow, deliberate process, like peeling off layers that no longer belong to you. For so long, many women have looked outward for permission to feel good about themselves, permission to take risks, permission to speak up, stand out, or slow down. But the 5% come to a powerful realization. No one else is coming to grant that permission. You have to give it to yourself. These women stop looking to others to decide how they should live, love, dress, speak, or dream. They no longer need a green light from society to follow their intuition, to trust their gut, to make choices that align with who they are, not who they were told to be. And the more they listen inward, the more confident they become. Not because they have all the answers, but because they've learned to trust themselves in the process of finding them. There is a unique kind of freedom that comes from no longer needing external validation. It's not about arrogance or ego, it's about alignment. It's about knowing that your worth doesn't come from how many people like you, agree with you, or celebrate you. It comes from within. It comes from being rooted in your values, connected to your truth, and grounded in your own experience. For years, many women are conditioned to silence that voice inside them. They're taught to question it, override it, suppress it in favor of what's practical, polite, or expected. But the 5%, they reclaim it. They start to ask, what do I want? What do I need? What feels right for me? And most importantly, they begin to listen for the answers, not from others, but from within. That internal trust becomes the foundation for everything else. It influences the way they make decisions, how they spend their time, who they let into their lives, and what they're willing to tolerate. They stop second, guessing their instincts or outsourcing their confidence. They realize that wisdom doesn't always come with a certificate or a title. It often comes quietly, from lived experience and deep reflection. What's remarkable is how liberating this shift is. When a woman stops performing for the world and starts showing up for herself, everything changes. She starts dressing for herself. She starts speaking her mind without fear of being misunderstood. She makes bold choices not because she's fearless, but because she finally believes her opinion matters just as much as anyone else's. This doesn't mean she never doubts herself. Doubt still creeps in, as it does for all of us, but she knows how to navigate it now. She knows how to pause, tune in, and reconnect with her truth before moving forward. She's no longer paralyzed by other people's opinions because she's more interested in her own integrity than their approval. And what's even more empowering, this self-trust becomes magnetic. The more she listens to herself, the more aligned she becomes. The more aligned she becomes, the more clearly she can lead, love, create, and inspire. It doesn't just benefit her, it lifts everyone around her. Her children witness what it looks like to live with intention. Her friends feel encouraged to do the same. Her presence gives others permission to trust their own voice too. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's steady, grounded, and deeply rooted. Because she's no longer building her identity on what others think, she's building it on what she knows to be true. To be in that 5% is to say, I don't need anyone else to tell me who I am. It's to stop waiting for applause, likes, or validation before you take up space. It's about walking into a room and knowing you belong, not because someone told you so, but because you've finally told yourself. That kind of self-trust doesn't happen overnight, but when it does, it becomes the most powerful tool you have. And after 40, when the world expects you to fade quietly into the background, the women who trust themselves are just getting started.